Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today we are talking about how you choose the right tabletop RPG system for you. So sit back and enjoy. If this is your first time here, I hope you will think about smashing the subscribe button, click the like button, and if anything comes up during this video that you feel like commenting on, please leave it below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Should you like anything that you see in this video, please head on over to my Patreon and think about supporting me, as well as joining up with my Discord server or joining my Facebook community over at Master the Game, where we discuss tabletop RPGs in game theory, mechanics, where I'm always coming up with my own homebrew things and sharing them through live videos. Before we get into the video, I want to give a quick shout out to DMGinfo and the system that he has created called the 70 system. I played in it recently and I must say it is a really good system. I also want to promote his module called Under the Tavern, which is a fantastic system neutral module. Now this is something you can play with D&D, Pathfinder, or any of that. It's very thorough. It's got a lot of pages, but it has free reign to allow you to choose what monsters you want and where, and it has a lot of traps. It's very, very, very well done. So I'm going to post a link to that below. Please head on over, check that out, check out the 7D system, and check out some of his other products while you're there. Thank you for choosing to watch this video. So let's get into it. Now, when you're trying to come up with which system you should play, there's quite a few things to actually consider. One of the things that I think is really important is which genre are you interested in playing? Are you interested in playing a fantasy game with high magic or low magic? Or are you interested in playing something that's a sci-fi game? All of these things could narrow your system choice down significantly because some systems just do not do certain genres well. Another thing you need to think about is, have you ever played a tabletop RPG before? If you haven't, you might want something that is less complex. You know, something more like a Fate, which Fate has more narrative control, but not a lot of mechanics to it. Or maybe you like the idea of having some complex rules that work for almost every situation in a way that you think makes sense. Systems like this might be a Pathfinder, GURPS. Another thing, if you don't want something too complex or something that is too rules light, you might want to look at something like a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It's a nice in-between system that's not too crunchy and not too simple. Again, if you're newer to tabletop RPGs, try to just stick to the core books and do not try to dabble with too many of the extra books like a Xanathar's Guide or things like that. And this goes for any system. Stick to like the core book, which they may have separated out into like a player's handbook and a monster manual, or they may just have a single book. If that's the case, stick to just the main books. Something to consider is your style of play. Now, if you're new to tabletop RPGs, you probably don't know your style of play just yet, but you should have an idea of what you think you might like. And so this could also dictate what type of game you want to play. If you are somebody who likes to control a situation and doesn't like things to seem too chaotic, you might prefer something that does have a few more rules for things. If you're somebody who is fine with improvising and just going with the flow, you might like something that's much more narrative. So again, that can steer you in different directions. All of these things you need to ask yourself, and when you're talking in groups trying to figure out, hey, what game should I try? These are the questions you need to be prepared to answer. Something that I think is often overlooked is what I would call availability. Well, availability, what does that mean? That means how accessible it is. Is it a game that's really popular, or is it a game that's not popular? Is it a game that has rave reviews and people love it? Or is it a game that people tend to dump on and say they don't like? I'm not saying to go with the most popular system out there or even the most popular system for your genre. I'm saying it's just something to consider. And the reason is because if you go with a system that isn't very popular or just has bad reviews, it might be difficult to find people willing to play your game. Again, a game like D&D, there's no shortage of players. There are games that I've struggled to find players for. I've experienced this firsthand and how hard it can be to find players because of a system. And it's unfortunate because all you'll find yourself wanting to do is play and play and play, and you might get discouraged. I would strongly recommend finding a system that at least has good reviews. If you are trying to find players for a system, there are many ways to do so. There are player finder apps such as Game4, which again, I know I've talked about this a lot lately. That app is fantastic. In fact, I've got multiple people within an hour of me that play various games. I could probably go and join a game tomorrow if I wanted to. So Game4 is a phone app that's free. I highly recommend it. Go check that out. There's also, if you just Google Tabletop RPG player finders, there are tons online. There's all sorts of player finders if you just put it in Google and search. So that's like my little tip for you there. But something that a lot of people don't even consider is Facebook. There are a lot of groups for various games. There's Roll20, you can find people there. Twitter, why not just ask people on Twitter? I know Sly Flourish did that recently, and it seemed to work out well for him. He had a game within a day, I believe. So again, go and get out there, be social, find some players. That's my tip for you there. Another thing to actually think about when it comes to determining what system to play is, do you like the idea of using miniatures? Or do you like the idea of doing a theater of the mind game, or a game that doesn't have visual aids at the table? And you might have props here and there, but you're not using actual miniatures. Miniatures, some people don't like them because they think it feels more like a board game. Others like them because it gives good representation of proper distance and who's where and things like that. I personally prefer miniatures. If I'm playing online, I tend to prefer more theater of the mind. Everyone's preferences vary. Some systems don't have miniature rules, and some systems are very heavy in miniature rules. That should play a factor in what system you choose to start off with as well. If you do choose to play with miniatures, there are plenty of cheap alternatives out there. You don't have to go out and spend hundreds of dollars on miniatures. I know a lot of people who make their tokens with 1-inch washers and sometimes 2-inch washers for bigger monsters. Another alternative is people make paper stand-ups. In the old days, I've heard of a lot of people who used dice for miniature representation. So again, if you want to use miniatures, you don't actually have to have miniatures. There's ways around it. Legos, so many different things. There's a lot of ideas out there on the internet. For some people, the cost might also be a factor. There are some pretty inexpensive systems out there, such as Savage Worlds, and there's some systems out there that cost a little more. You know, D&D books are about $50. Savage Worlds is about $10. If you're fine with black and white art and soft covered books, you might be interested in Palladium books for about $25 a book. So again, the cost can vary. Some companies do PDFs, whereas others do not. So you can usually find stuff in PDF form for pretty cheap over on DriveThruRPG or through certain companies' websites. So if you're fine with using PDFs and reading it on your laptop or tablet, that's another inexpensive way that you can get into this hobby and choose systems, or even just preview a system before actually purchasing the books. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, smash that subscribe button, click like, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment below. Get your game on.